On November 29, 2007, an anonymous 4chan user uploaded a disturbing post with the words, "If anyone can correctly guess their own post number, I will tell you where she is buried." Eerily, the post was accompanied by an image of a teenage girl. For context, on 4chan, each thread is assigned a unique post number, which is completely random and serves as an identifier for that specific post. These kinds of posts where the OP would reward other users with something if they managed to guess their exact post number were pretty common. But the rewards themselves were rarely this dark and specific. You can probably understand how the creepy nature of this particular post instantly caught the attention of so many people. It's worth mentioning that the dates and times from the screenshots shown are the archive dates and times, meaning they're not accurate. But over the following minutes after the post was made, several other users jumped in to guess their post numbers. And just 15 minutes later, a user correctly guessed theirs. After which, the OP made good on their promise and said, "Winner, here you go," and then a set of coordinates. Strangely, the coordinates pointed to a pretty random patch of trees on the side of a county road about 50 miles east of El Dorado, Kansas. But as it was later revealed, there was nothing random about the location. The girl in the image in the anonymous user's post was 18-year-old Emily Sander, a Butler Community College student who had gone missing a little less than a week before the disturbing post was made. Shockingly, the police found Sanders' partially clothed body around an hour after the coordinates were revealed at the exact coordinates provided by the user. It's important to mention that by the time the uploader revealed the coordinates on 4chan, the cops had already been investigating Emily's disappearance for a few days, and they were already zeroing in on a suspect. As the investigation had revealed, Emily had disappeared on November 23rd of that year after leaving a bar outside El Dorado with a man named Israel Mireles. According to two witnesses, Israel had bought Emily and her friends drinks at a Chinese restaurant in El Dorado before accompanying them at a bar called The Retreat. After the two left the bar, Emily was never seen alive again. Following the finding of some pretty compelling evidence of Israel's involvement in Emily's disappearance, the authorities put out a warrant for his arrest. But by then, Israel had already fled to Mexico. Fortunately, due to the severity of the crimes, the cops were able to extradite him back to Kansas for interrogation. During his testimony, the suspect claimed that after they had left the bar, he and Emily had gone back to a motel room together. According to his version of the events, at one point in the night, another man had shown up at the motel room and tried to rob him, after which he allegedly left the motel alone. When he came back a few hours later, Sanders was supposedly dead. The story is already kind of hard to believe, especially when you factor in that after allegedly finding the lifeless victim in the room, Israel claimed that he panicked, put her body in the trunk of his car, and headed to a house where his 16-year-old pregnant girlfriend was staying in nearby Baxter Springs. Again, this was already a huge stretch, and it didn't exactly help Israel's case that investigators found a large knife and clothing with his DNA in a trash can at his girlfriend's home in Baxter Springs. When it was more than obvious that Israel was responsible for the crime, a judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole. As for the 4chan thread, I couldn't find any official confirmation that the post was uploaded by Israel. And it's worth mentioning that because the coordinates were revealed a little under an hour before the cops officially announced where they had found Emily, the thread could have been opened by someone on the police force who knew about the location before the public. Still, there's a very real possibility that the 4chan post was uploaded by the killer himself, adding an even more disturbing layer to an already horrific crime. On August 25, 2009, a 4chan user opened a thread with the title, "Look What I Found." The caption read, "So, I was looting through some stuff my dad left when he died, and I found this. The old bastard had a live grenade. It seems kinda old, but looks okay to me. What would the random board do with it?" Next to the caption was an image of the OP's hand holding what appeared to be a live grenade. For the next 15 minutes, the thread was flooded with all kinds of comments from users all around the world, with some claiming that the grenade was fake and asking the uploader for proof that it was made out of real metal and wasn't just a plastic imitation. Let me see the bottom of it. Bottom. It's plastic, lol. No plastic, dimwit, it's all metal. With this comment, the OP included an image of himself holding up a lighter to a grenade, which is obviously a horrific idea. Still, it was nothing compared to what was coming. Disturbingly, some of the other commenters encouraged the poster to throw the grenade in the toilet, saying things like, "Toss in toilet, don't flush, wait for epic fountain." You would think that the OP would be able to interpret the comment as a joke, but sure enough, a few minutes later he posted another image, this time showing his hand holding the live grenade over the toilet along with the caption, should I? This is where the story gets pretty disturbing. After posting this image, the OP suddenly went silent. Over the following minutes, other commenters jumped in to ask him what he ended up doing with the grenade, but there was no response from the OP. Shortly after, a commenter uploaded a screenshot of an article that had been published by a news station in Guatemala that same day. Chillingly, the article broke the story of a 17-year-old boy named Oscar Lopez who had passed away after detonating a live grenade in the bathroom of his house. According to the article, the boy's dad had been involved in the military at some point, which explains why it was in his home. Because of the timing, most of the commenters concluded that Oscar Lopez was the OP and immediately condemned the users who encouraged him to throw the grenade in the toilet. In the weeks following the incident, several news stations from Spanish-speaking countries published the story, which brought a lot of attention to the original thread on 4chan. Over the years, the story of Oscar's grenade has been reposted all over the internet thousands of times. And it's made its way into dozens of YouTube videos covering the most disturbing incidents caused by online threads. However, through my research, I wasn't able to find the original article or anything that would indicate that the story was real. Even after spending hours searching through online archives, I found absolutely no trace of the original article, which suggests that the article could have been faked. The only articles I did find were the ones that were published after the incident and cited only the original, non-existent article as their source. It's also pretty suspicious that the article was allegedly published pretty much within an hour of the OP's last comment, which further supports the idea that the whole thing was faked. It's possible that the OP himself could have posted the photoshopped article screenshot from another account to get attention. Or that he could have made the original post and then went quiet to get a reaction from the crowd, after which another user could have jumped in to keep the story going with a fake news article. Although, it's still very possible this is real and the original article has just since been lost to time. Because the incident is over 15 years old at this point, we'll likely never know the whole truth. Back in 2009, dozens of 4chan users started to bring attention to a pretty strange phenomenon that was taking place all over the internet, in which some mysterious comments about key lime pie were cropping up on countless websites, blogs, and forums everywhere online. Although the original 4chan threads in which these discussions took place have since been deleted, I was able to find some more recent Reddit threads covering the same key lime pie phenomenon. In 2016, Reddit user KeyLimeWTF uploaded a long post about his or her investigation into the whole thing, and it read, "So I'm just gonna throw this one out there since I haven't found anyone who's investigated or discussed this super weird, almost nonsensical mystery. To begin, I was reading a story in my local college newspaper. In fact, it was the most read article on the site. There were 3 comments on the story itself, and one of them seemed utterly strange. There's an absurd amount of references to pop culture names as well as some political names. But the subject of every line relates back to, more often than not, these things. Mrs. Anita Pelaez, Captain Coochie Pelaez, Key Lime Pie, some Coochie's restaurant, North Carolina near the Biltmore Estate, Key West, Florida. And not every post is exactly the same, but some are. Some reference weird pop culture icons, while some just seem to be weird out-of-place pie recipes. The oldest post we found was from 2009, with the most recent being an awful TMZ story. Super weird, but if you were to Google or research those names associated with key lime pie, what you would discover is that this has been posted all over US media sites. A couple of things here that we discovered down the rabbit hole. Coochie's Key West Bar and Grill existed in one way or another. It's listed on local eatery websites and Google Maps, but there's really no information as to what exactly it was. The majority of the posts we found were done by a Jake Carson, a fake name, or by celebrity/political figures. Nothing totally makes sense, yet everything is related. Also, who would go through this much trouble for something as ridiculous as key lime pie for a restaurant that isn't real? I found that pretty much everything the OP was talking about in their post was perfectly true. There are indeed thousands upon thousands of strange comments and reviews about Captain Coochie's key lime pies on countless random websites. And a lot of these comments have appeared on sites that have absolutely nothing to do with pie, such as this extremely long and somewhat inappropriate comment that was posted on a memorial site for a woman from San Jose who passed away at 74. As I also found, a lot of these comments are posted in articles and blogs revolving around suggestive content, such as this other one that appears in an article about a dating show. It reads, "That Captain Coochie Pelaez of Cucharidaville over in Asheville, North Carolina sure enough is one wild and crazy guy. All the women are so wild about him and his famous cheeseburgers and key lime pies. But even though these comments are definitely weird, these are just 2 of thousands of accounts that have been created to post these comments everywhere online. As you might have noticed, the phrasing of these rants seem to follow a bit of a pattern. In pretty much all of the comments, almost all the words have been capitalized where they shouldn't be, and the poster always signs off in the same way, with 3 dots after the last word, followed by a fake name. I found that these comments have also been made on random Facebook posts. As you might have guessed, a bunch of people over the years have reached out to these Facebook accounts, and the responses they've gotten have been pretty disturbing, as you can see in this 2016 Reddit thread. The post reads, "I decided to send Kuchi Palaya's a message and ask him when the world can know who Captain Kuchi is. I didn't expect a reply, but roughly a month later Kuchi replied, 'There's just no medicine like an all-natural key lime pie made from scratch.' Plus a bunch of other garbled nonsense about key lime pie. After a little bit of back and forth, the user asked Captain Kuchi for the address of the restaurant, and this was the response they got. 'Close your eyes, let your ears listen to the radio. Do you hear my voice? Can you hear your own soul scream? Let me choose. My voice that predicts the future or your tormented reach. What do you choose? You can choose. Your life, your future.' As smart as you are, you may have already found out that the radio drama from 75 years ago was the truth. They are on our planet, and they watch and see everything. Don't trust anyone. Don't trust the police. They are already controlled by them." And a few more lines of paranoid ranting. Strangely, the original message was sent in Swedish, which is the Reddit user's native language. What makes this disturbing is that there was nothing on the user's profile indicating that their first language was Swedish, which indicates that Captain Kuchi could have stalked the user. And eerily, this wasn't the only time this happened. Whenever people reached out to these accounts to ask for information about the key lime pie phenomenon, they would often receive strange responses with very specific information about their lives that the key lime pie people had no reason to know. The rabbit hole in this mystery goes pretty deep, but some things have been confirmed to be true. For example, as mentioned in the Key Lime WTF's Reddit post, Kuchi's Key West Bar and Grill was a real place in Asheville, North Carolina. According to dozens of Reddit users, the original owners were Oswald C. Pelayas, aka Kuchi, and his wife Anita Pelayas. But interestingly, even though the random comments and reviews are almost all about pie, the restaurant was actually known for its burgers. Still, despite this information, it's hard to understand where the connection is between the restaurant and the 15-year-long campaign to flood the internet with strange reviews about their key lime pies. Over the years, this has led thousands of people all over the internet to come up with all kinds of theories to explain the phenomenon. The first theory is that all of the comments and reviews are coming from a single poster. Technically, this is a possibility. I mean, it's not uncommon for people with extreme obsessive personalities to become fixated on something as random as key lime pie and dedicate years to spreading bizarre content across the internet. However, the sheer volume of posts, accounts, and languages involved makes this kind of hard to believe. If you think about it, this would require the poster to individually open and verify thousands and thousands of sub-accounts, which would require a ton of different email addresses and more time than we can imagine. This is why a lot of people have suggested that all of these comments could be coming from a bot. The fact that all the comments are written in a similar style makes this a possibility, but there's one major caveat here. Over the past couple of decades, Google has really cracked down on bot accounts, making it increasingly difficult for random bots to open accounts and post comments on random blogs and sites. And sure, this could be a pretty advanced bot that's been updated over the years to beat Google's security measures, but there's really very little motive for anyone to take the time to design something like this. So, in the absence of a solid explanation, some slightly more disturbing theories have been proposed by the online community. According to one of the most popular ones, these comments could be a coded method of communication for some sort of cult or underground organization with nefarious purposes. This could explain the endless, seemingly random pop culture references and indecipherable strings of garbled text with random capitalization. I also found some Reddit comments where the users alleged that Kuchi's Key West Bar and Grill was being used as a cover-up for something more sinister. For example, in 2017, a user posted a comment saying, "I grew up in Arden and drove by it nearly every day of my life and never once saw more than one car there. When I reached my 20s, I assumed it was a money laundering operation or something similar. A friend of mine actually ate there once many years ago. If I recall correctly, it was empty and the food was unremarkable. It had never occurred to me to do the same. This is honestly just one of those mysteries that you could make an entire documentary series about and you'd still barely be scratching the surface. To this day, nobody really knows where all these comments are coming from, who's posting them, and why or even how many people are involved in this whole campaign. And considering how deep the rabbit hole goes with this one, we can safely assume that it'll probably stay that way for a long time. On Christmas Day 2014, an anonymous 4chan user opened a pretty disturbing thread with the words, "I bought a Wii U, but it was broken, so I opened the Wii U, and this thing was inside. What is this?" Next to the captions, the user uploaded a couple of images of some sort of brown, oval-shaped object inside the console. At first glance, the OP thought it was probably something an animal had left in there, but a few minutes later, he followed up with some images that looked like something straight out of a nightmare. Apparently, the brown object was some sort of spider nest, and as soon as the OP cracked it open, it looked like this. A few minutes later, the poster commented, "At least the spiders are already dead. Whatever happened, it's an egg opened too soon or an egg that never managed to open. The spiders must have devoured each other to stay alive and eventually grew to max capacity and truly died. The size shows they're adults, but the color shows they literally have no plating or skin." 3 minutes later, the OP gave a chilling update saying, "This one was still alive." And this is where the thread starts to get a little disturbing. Just a few seconds later, another user commented on the post saying, "Okay, I googled it for you, OP. That's a dirt dauber nest. The spiders are paralyzed inside of it. If they're not dead by now and they're actually fresh catches, they're gonna be waking up soon." And responding to the image of the live spider the OP posted, the user warned, "This spider kind of looks like a brown recluse. If you let it sting you, your arm is going to start rotting while you're alive." Responding to the original picture of the spiders, another user commented, "By the looks of it, the last one just woke up, and the dirt dauber might not even have started laying its larvae yet. If that's the case, these might all just be paralyzed. Also, I'm afraid for OP's life, since the spider that did wake up looks like a brown recluse, and if that's actually the case, the OP has a dirt dauber nest full of brown recluses. He's in for one hell of a ride." Over the next several minutes, dozens of other users jumped in the chat to warn the OP not to provoke the spiders under any circumstances. Fortunately, shortly after, the OP posted a final update to the thread saying, "OP here, they weren't dead and they started to move. I ran out of my house and called the exterminator. I'm posting from my cell phone." It's pretty disturbing to think that a nest of poisonous spiders could be growing inside of one of your consoles without you knowing it. And according to another commenter, it's actually pretty common for dirt daubers to do this. Thankfully, it looks like the OP was okay. In March 2020, an anonymous 4chan user posted an image of a missing girl named Lisa Irwin, along with a set of coordinates that point to a random location in the middle of the trees somewhere in Lakeside Village, Kansas. For context, Lisa had gone missing in October 2011 when she was just a 10-month-old baby. That day, Jeremy Irwin, Lisa's dad, came back from work at 4 a.m. and immediately called the cops when he saw his daughter was missing from her crib. Disturbingly, he mentioned to his wife Deborah that the front door was unlocked and that 3 cell phones were missing. During the investigation, a bunch of really strange things started happening, and it was hard for the cops to make sense of anything. Even though some witnesses had reported seeing a strange man carrying a baby wearing a diaper near the area where Lisa had gone missing, they didn't have enough evidence to arrest a particular suspect. Surveillance video from the area showed a man dressed in white leaving a wooded area near the Irwins' house at 2:30 a.m., but the suspect the cops brought in as a result of the footage had rock-solid alibis. Chillingly, when the cops searched the Irwins' house that same year, dogs picked up the scent of a dead body in Deborah's bedroom. When the authorities confronted her about it, she claimed she didn't initially look for her daughter because she was afraid of what she might find. This was just the first in a series of strange claims and contradictions that Lisa's mom would find herself in. Later, she would allege that the last time she had seen her baby, it had been around 10:30 p.m. But after, she confessed that she had been drinking with a friend and didn't remember when the last time she saw her daughter was. Investigators also accused Deborah of failing a lie detector test, and even her own best friend told the police that Deborah had a dark side and that she believed she could have been responsible for the disappearance of her own daughter. Strangely, the cops later found that one of the 3 cell phones that were taken from the house had made a 50-second call late on the night Lisa went missing. But both Deborah and Jeremy denied making the call. When the cops investigated the call, they found that it had been made to a Kansas City woman named Megan Wright. Interestingly, Megan had once been in a relationship with a suspect in the case, a drifter who lived in a halfway house close to the Irwins. Still, she denied being the one who had picked up the phone on the night of Lisa's disappearance. To this day, the cops are convinced that whoever made that call is responsible for whatever happened to Lisa, but in the absence of new evidence, the case went cold for a very long time. The image you see in the 4chan thread is actually an age-progressed picture released by the authorities to help the public identify the victim, and it shows what Lisa would have looked like at 7 years old. As soon as the user posted the coordinates, some of the commenters started suspecting that the OP was the perpetrator, and that the coordinates pointed to the location in the middle of the woods where Lisa's body was located. One user commented, "I just emailed this thread to 2 local NBC affiliates in Kansas that cover the Thompsonville and Oskaloosa area. Hopefully this is legit and we can finally do some good and bring peace to a family." But even though a lot of people got in touch with the police over the leaked coordinates, frustratingly, nothing really came of them. And it's unclear if the cops just didn't investigate the coordinates, or if they did but they didn't find anything there. To this day, Lisa's disappearance has created more questions than answers. Was it the guy who was seen in the surveillance footage? Was it the parents? Or the 4chan user? We'll likely never know. As you probably know, one of the most popular features of 4chan was that it allowed its users to stay completely anonymous, which was part of the culture of the forum. Still, some users chose to have a username to put more weight behind their words and engage in genuine social interactions with others. This was the case with user UTV, who was very active on the 4chan sports board back in the day. Based on his post, UTV was an Englishman who followed the Premier League, was a fan of Aston Villa striker Christian Benteke, and hated Manchester City. Most of his interactions in the boards he participated in are pretty much exactly what you'd expect from a slightly aggressive sports fan in an online board. But there was one thing that made UTV's post stand out in the sea of 4chan threads. Strangely, UTV had a secret admirer, an anonymous user who tracked, archived, and followed every single one of UTV's posts and comments across more than 250 threads. Whenever UTV posted anything, the anonymous user would archive his posts, comment on them, and summarize his activities with perfect precision. At first, it was kind of funny, and it seemed like the user was just a troll who liked to mess with UTV for no particular reason. And it seemed like the trolling had the desired effect, as UTV would often blurt out some pretty aggressive comments at the anonymous user, frustrated with the level of obsession the user had developed towards him. In one thread, UTV commented, "Archiving my posts in here is one thing, but you're actually stalking me in other threads too. Get a life." After weeks of stalking and obsessing over UTV's every move, the user earned himself the nickname The Archiver from other board members who found his activities hilarious. Unfortunately for UTV, the more he engaged with the Archiver, the more the Archiver would obsess over logging, categorizing, summarizing, praising, and decorating his posts. And like I said, at first it was kind of funny, especially if you were just a random 4chaner watching the whole thing develop from a distance. But after a few weeks, the plot took a pretty creepy turn. In July 2013, the Archiver was no longer satisfied with simply logging the posts, so he started composing songs and poems based on UTV's interests and personality, including a limerick that read, "There was once a young Phil from Kent who loved to call Frodo an ent. He bet against Villa in a 3-1 thriller. They lost and his money was sent." It's worth noting that UTV's real name was actually Phil, meaning the Archiver had started finding out more and more personal information about him as time went on. Over the following weeks, the Archiver progressed from songs and poems to other kinds of worship and obsession, which included making ink blot tests featuring UTV's posts, as well as designing detailed floor plans for the home he would like to live in if he and UTV ever moved in together. He even made preparations for UTV's funeral with detailed instructions for his family to follow on the day of the ceremony. The madness continued for several weeks, until on October 7, the Archiver made his final post about UTV in the TRB board saying, "I have been with UTV for 255 threads. This is the last one. My parents have discovered my UTV works, and they have insisted I remove everything of the type from my computer and be done with it. They will be monitoring my activities now to ensure I cannot do it anymore. This is my final message. I'm sorry to UTV, and I hope he sees this and understands. I have one more gift to share with him. This 97-page document contains every personal work I've created that involves UTV in any way. It is for him. I do not want anyone else to read it. However, I cannot stop you from doing so." As the entire internet soon found out, the Archiver wasn't lying about the document. He literally compiled an almost 100-page PDF featuring everything he had written and designed over almost 5 months of insane obsession over a random dude on 4chan. The Philmerillion, as the archiver titled the document, contained detailed information about Phil's posts, his interests, and his interactions with the archiver. On the front page, an explanation for the document reads, "Why am I doing this? Because UTV is my passion, my hobby, and my social life. I love him, and I love archiving his posts. Archiving his posts isn't enough. They are my bread and butter, but this is the salt and pepper on the sandwich that spices it up." The rest of the 97-page document is about as crazy as you'd expect from a guy who spent all his waking hours stalking another guy on 4chan. It contains detailed stories and fantasies involving the archiver and UTV, a detailed plan to make UTV like him more, pictures of inventions and gadgets the archiver designed using snippets of UTV's posts, an incredibly dark and meticulously planned blueprint to abduct UTV and hold him hostage for £40 million, and so much more stuff that you can't even imagine. When the archiver shared his masterwork, Phil responded only with a question mark and then vanished forever from 4chan. To this day, the internet still doesn't know what to make of the archiver or his motivations behind obsessing over a stranger to such an insane degree. Some allege mental illness, others think the archiver just genuinely loved Phil. But whatever the case, the PDF served as a wake-up call to be careful who you talk to or give information about yourself online, because you never really know what they're doing with it.